Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Ex Machina. This film came out in 2015. It is directed by Alex Garland. Garland has had a very interesting career. He began actually as a novelist. He wrote The Beach, which of course became a Hollywood film. He moved on to screenwriting from there. He wrote 28 Days Later and Sunshine. Now he's graduating further and trying to gain total artistic control with Ex Machina. This is his official directorial debut. And I have to admit to you, I hadn't seen the two films he directed until very recently, and I have to say I have a very interesting reaction to him, and I wonder if other people feel the same way. I do like his films. I find them very, very alluring, and I think about them frequently. They certainly left an impression on me, and they tickled my curiosities, I think, on a multitude of things. And I appreciate all of that. That said, I find myself more fascinated by his films than I am drawn into them. I always feel very separate from the experience, and never is it a situation where like the edges of the frame fully disappear and I am fully one with the experience. But trust me, I want to be compelled by him. He's leading me in a direction that I'm really digging. I really, I want to go in it. And that's, I think, why some of my frustrations feel a little more magnified, or maybe they carry more weight. I think he could make a really, really great film. I truly do. I just think so far, he's been a little bit half-baked. As a filmmaker, I think he's somebody that is, and maybe just a storyteller as well, I think he's caught somewhere between really enjoying pulp and really enjoying more art house type of stuff. And I think that he makes entertainment that is very accessible. But I think deep down, he's intrigued more by like really deeply cerebral ideas and very abstract things too. When I watch this film, it reminds me of stuff like Altered States. It also reminds me a little bit of Blade Runner, and certainly a lot of it reminds me of 2001, A Space Odyssey. And I'm getting a taste of both tones. I'm getting a taste of the accessibility without really going into that direction in the way that satisfies me. And I'm also getting a taste of more like the intellectual, the more abstract aspects of things, and it's not really digging into that either. It's not finding the right balance for me. And it is ambitious. There's a lot of ideas going on, very lofty ideas about consciousness and the nature of it, how it works, why it works, also technology and evolution, how all of that comes into play, how that relates to consciousness, and just all those sensory feelings that we experience through gender, through just experience. There's a lot here that I love. And some of the scenes, I think they really handle those conversations with genuine care and genuine interest. I think when it comes to Garland, the thing that sticks with me just overall about both of his films so far is that there's a sense of letting go of the stronghold of the human experience, the human element, in a very, very tragic way. And I think when it's done effectively, once you lose the human element fully and evolution, carries forward, I think it should be devastating. It's a classic Frankenstein monster story. The film has a very strange exposition, a very brief one that is, setting up the story, setting up our protagonist. I don't really care for it personally, but there's a lot of stuff here when it comes to the editing and the pacing that really just throw me off. It feels like my natural impulses and my curiosities as a viewer aren't really being tapped into in a way that feels intrinsic. I want to see characters growing, I want to see ideas coming out of all of that, and I want tension to be built here. That's very crucial. And the same could be said about how everything is very disorienting in terms of the editing. It's like, it kind of goes against my natural inclination as a viewer and kind of my natural inclination artistically, I suppose. I'm sitting there thinking, why am I confused by how disorienting it feels rather than being stimulated by it? And something that was bothering me when I watched this film maybe the second time and then Annihilation is just the lack of continuity, like between the eye lines in different scenes and different shots, like the reaction shots, especially for characters. They don't exist in the way that I want them to. I feel like we really need to thread some intimacy between the characters in order for, again, the emotion to pay off and the tension to pay off. I want to be more rooted in the experience of Caleb, our main character, somebody who is meant to feel like a sense of dread, claustrophobia, and paranoia, and certainly skepticism. I want to feel all of that. It's like, why am I here? Who can I trust? And I know a lot of people will say, well, the point is for everything to feel disconnected. Everything is supposed to feel a little bit off kilter, and that's the whole point of everything, to not feel a connection, and I get that. But again, it's just the way that it's executed. It feels more sloppy to me than intriguing, intuitive. It doesn't carry momentum forward for me. And maybe it's that I'm not smart enough to get it. I don't know, maybe I can come back to it later and feel differently, but it's just not sitting right with me at the moment. That said, I really like some of the writing here. I really like Nathan as a character, played by Oscar Isaac. I think he's actually the most interesting character in the whole film. He is a sort of Elon Musk type, I guess you could say, like a tech guru prodigy, but also like a major nihilist with a god complex. I like the way his character was handled because I think it's one of those characters where you could really interpret it in all kinds of ways. You could cast all kinds of different people. And I think, just depending on the skill of the actor, each one could bring something very different and very interesting. And it's interesting that they cast Oscar Isaac just because he wouldn't be my first choice. I should just say, like, he's not somebody that I would naturally consider for a role like this. And that's why he's interesting, I think. It's a unique choice, and they went more for that like minimalist kind of slow burn type of approach. I really like that kind of passive aggressive demeanor that he has. That approach to the character is, I think, very, very crucial, and it's very clear from the beginning that he has this attitude about him. They don't waste time conveying that he's maybe a little bit destructive or a lot destructive. He's also very insecure and kind of wrapped up in a major sense of ego. He's lonely. He's on edge always in a way, perhaps because of the amount of alcohol that he consumes on the regular. And so you should always feel tense in his presence. He's also very complex and very smart and very self-aware in certain areas and maybe not in others. But I don't know, I like the way they handle a lot of the dialogue between both him and Caleb, as I said. Maybe a lot of those ideas aren't necessarily coming to fruition in the ways that I want, but they're probing it in ways that excite me. I do feel like his character is the most fully formed, and I think that's important because there is, in the third act, a very subversive tactic here that the script is using that I love. I think it's really fantastic in concept. It's the kind of thing, it reminds me a little bit of the ending of Planet of the Apes, but of course that I find to be far more compelling in the execution of it. But the script very much is making us clear from the beginning, or it's making it clear from the beginning to us that we should not trust Nathan, that we always need to be skeptical of him. And Caleb needs to be very skeptical of him. And the script leads us in a direction of Nathan's threat just growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And yet in the end of it, it turns out that he was the one that was correct all along, and that he had this warning of never to trust AI, and he was right. And it was Caleb and his weaknesses as a human that got him all caught up in the illusion. And the robot here, or the Frankenstein monster, is played by Alicia Vikander as Ava. And I really love the design of Ava, just in the look of her. It looks very much like a mannequin that's like sprinkled with like fairy dust or something very whimsical. There's a very convincing spark to her where you just kind of feel her energy in her eyes and the emotions that it's kind of like fluttering in her voice. It's almost like that emotion is like wanting to spill out desperately into the world, but she can't. And all of these are really great tactics to lure Caleb in to the trap. I like the way she kind of whizzes and whirs and buzzes when she moves and everything. I like her movements, and I don't know, I feel like her face, just naturally as an actress, is very cinematic without much effort. And that's very, I think, important for a role like this. And of course, there is a budding sort of emotional core here that is growing between both Caleb and Ava, and their interactions are very curious. And yet again, they're just a little bit off for me. Something is just not quite landing. It feels like a lot of the emotion and everything is kind of being cut down and tailored in a way that fits a very compact narrative or a compact runtime. Like I said, the disconnected feeling, the sterileness of everything is so important to the story, but at the same time, we need to be connected to the human element. Without it, the script doesn't work. Without it, the emotion or any of the ideas don't pay off together. It's plain and simple. Yes, Nathan is a genius of sorts, and he is working towards the next stage of evolution in a way that is remarkable, taking true interest in innovation while also kind of being aware of the big picture. And yet, he's also rooted in the human condition, just like anybody else, the pleasures of the flesh, the pains of the mind. He's also a really pathetic drunk who just is very lonely and very horny, and he wants to feel like a man. And that's, I think, a really crucial part of things that's going to lead us into maybe seedier, darker elements of the film, though I don't think the film really knows what to do with all of that information. It doesn't know how to shift everything into the third act, where that tension can really escalate. But no, it feels very much like it's kind of on the same level all the way through the movie. There's just a monotony to the tone of it, which just doesn't really help my engagement. And little things, like the film is broken up, or the narrative structure of it is broken up by the sessions between Ava and Caleb, the interviews that he is conducting with her. And I think that really works in the beginning of the film. You know, it helps us kind of establish a certain routine and everything, but I think it starts to feel, especially towards the third act, it feels kind of meaningless. It feels arbitrary. Also, aesthetically, this film is just not quite plunging in the ways that I want it to. It's like I know what it's going for, absolutely. You know, it's really kind of ethereal and sterile and hipster in all the ways. It's quite Kubrickian, but it's also like very like Silicon Valley hipster. It has really nice lighting, and it's a perfect place, I think, for like great cinematography and all that, but it just, again, it just felt a little bit uninspired and a little bit too on the nose for that kind of hipster A24 look. The score is also very two-dimensional for me. I want like a Mika Levy or something like that. Somebody who really has an understanding of soundscape. She can really go to some kind of slithery, unnerving places and give us really unique textures, plunging us into a mood. Though I think the space, at least, you know, just the house, the way it's designed, the blueprint of it is really great in theory for creating tension. And it's similar to The Shining, I guess you could say. The seeds are planted early in that film in the same way that they are, you know, here for Caleb. Though I struggle a little bit with the actor who plays Caleb. It's not that he's bad, it's just he's not quite working for me. Initially, I was kind of blaming him for the issues that I had, but now I think it's kind of a mix of the two. I think it's both him and the writing that's just not quite gelling together. I just never really felt like I got a grasp on his character, and any real pathos or any real defining aspects of his character just feel kind of like recycled cliches that we've seen and done certainly better than this. You know, like the whole thing about like, oh, my parents died, both of them died, and I was in the back of the car. That just felt kind of trite and unnecessary, and it kind of cheapens the whole effect of what's going on here. I don't think you need something like that in order to create a certain sense of pathos. The actor does feel, even just in his look and everything and in his demeanor, I think he's just more suited to play a villain more than a hero, somebody that we want to follow. And I know that part of it is he's not supposed to be really likable. He's not supposed to be romanticized in any way. He's supposed to be nerdy and uncool and relatable. But the relatable aspect of it is just not quite landing. And I want him to ease us into watching the experience of Nathan's self-destruct in a way that's really compelling, because yeah, ultimately, I do think that this movie is a lot about ego, especially male ego, because ultimately few things can tear down a man's ego like a woman can. And all of that masculine aggression one might feel to prove themselves in a primal sense, that's merely a plaything for a femme fatale. Why are all of Nathan's robots sexy women? Well, you know, you can guess. But the things that make you vulnerable and the things that you're drawn to in a sexual way, I think say a lot about you. And often, how do you get to the heart of a villain? Through the woman, through his woman. And I do like the girls here. I like that he has like this Asian prostitute sort of aesthetic going on, and you have that, you know, the one girl kind of slinking around constantly and never saying anything. And Ava, you know, she just looks, you know, she looks like a mannequin, but, you know, she resembles a blow-up doll, at least to me. And there's a lot of elements of the Freudian and the feminine versus masculine in this movie through the voyeurism and all of that. I wanted it to go so much further. That was the thing that I found really intriguing through just the whole concept. And that frustrates me because that particular aspect of things is rarely done well. But man, what a feeling of being torn with a director, really, because I really like this movie. I know it seems like I'm being really, really tough on it, and I am, certainly, but I like the movie, and I would love to watch it again. I can see myself watching it multiple times and being totally fine with it. But at the same time, it does feel like a first film, which is okay. You know, we all have to start somewhere, but yeah, there's just a lot of things here that feel like confusing to me. The tone is confusing. The ideas feel half-baked, even though there's a really interesting thesis that they are probing here constantly. The emotion is half-baked, and it needed to be more cinematic. It needed to be just more special as an artistic experience, and I think it needed to be bolder. I also think that it needed to slow down a lot, actually. I think this movie is actually too brief. Again, we're just breezing through character beats and plot points, and then when we get to the climax, I don't really feel anything. And trust me, the ending really gets to me just in theory. As a concept, it's like, oh man, that's devastating. That's the type of thing that can keep you up at night. It's just that it's not executed in a way where it feels emotionally satisfying to me, where I feel the weight of it. And I don't know, I also think that tonally the film didn't quite know how to handle Ava in the end. It didn't know how to handle her self-actualization in a way that is both satisfying as a sense of it's liberating, a self-actualization, but also it turns your blood cold at the same time. But it's a really interesting film. I think whether you have issues with it or you don't, it's totally worth your time, and I absolutely recommend it if you haven't seen it. But anyway, that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist and I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a portrait or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Thank you guys so much for your support. Welcome all the new members as well. If you are interested in becoming a patron, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.